Ой, Тригlav, moj dom, kako si krasan, kako me izbavljaš iz niskih ravna. Po letnji vročini na skalne vrhe, da tam si spočinil samotni srce.
As Macron's stormtrooper police get rough with the Gilets jaunes, the government has just hiked France's food prices. The Gilets jaunes, yellow jacket protests are still going on in France. You might have seen some of my coverage from rebelfrance.com. A couple of months ago when I went out to see those protests. We got some incredible footage, and just over the last weekend we've seen huge fires burning around the Eiffel Tower, and the police are getting even tougher with the protesters than they ever have before, and believe me, they were tough when I was there. And amidst all these ongoing Gilets jaunes protests, the government has now just hiked the prices of many food and drinks that are being sold in the supermarkets. Something that the Gilets jaunes protesters told me that they were concerned about. It's one of the main reasons they were out protesting, is because of that high cost of living. That cost of living is one of the driving factors behind this massive protest, not just in Paris but across the country. But the government just seems to be making all the wrong decisions. The food price hike came into effect as of February 1st, with an average increase in price of about 6.3% on popular foods, and that's from camembert cheese to orange juice, cereal, spaghetti and butter. These are just average things that people buy in their regular weekly shop. So let's break all this down. The law was actually designed technically to try and help smaller businesses reduce the cost of the food that they're selling. But there are doubts about whether this can even work, because it involves a 10% margin threshold for sellers, meaning that something previously sold for €1 now must be sold for €1.10. And the law will apply to supermarkets and hypermarkets, so that's the bigger, mostly chain shops, presumably in an attempt to try and help the smaller businesses who sell food, meaning that they can sell products at a cheaper price. They can sell it for €1 instead of €1.10. So this is an attempt to stop the bigger sellers selling their produce at cost price effectively. And a total of 1,000 food and drink brands are going to be affected by this. But it sounds good on the surface, but there's problems with this, because the Gilets jaunes are already angry about the cost of living in France, and any move to make food more expensive, no matter the excuse, is not going to go down well. In my reports from Paris last year, the Gilets jaunes spoke about their concerns about a fuel price hike. Now there's a food price hike. That's obviously not going to go down well. Sure, it means that smaller companies are going to have a bit of a technical competitive advantage over the bigger supermarkets, but what about the consumers who go to these supermarkets on a regular basis? Now, there's a French consumer rights group that said the Gilets jaunes protesters regularly shop at out-of-town stores and supermarkets. That's where normal people go to get their food, meaning the price hike is going to hit the Gilets jaunes the hardest. So that clearly not been thought through very much. This is the opposite of what the Gilets jaunes are demanding when they go out into the streets to protest against Macron. The French people on smaller incomes are going to be the ones paying more. Well done, Macron. And in January, the French Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, announced plans to punish people for unsanctioned protests. So while this food hike price is going on, they're obviously expecting people to be continuing the protests, and they're right to expect it because it's happening. So the Prime Minister introduced these plans to punish people for unsanctioned protests, meaning there was a crackdown on mask wearing for demonstrators, and they discussed plans for a further 80,000 members of the security forces being deployed to stop new protests taking place. But here's the thing, it hasn't worked. People are still regularly taking to the streets across France, not just Paris, across the whole country, despite Macron's stormtrooper police, because that's what they are at this point, stormtroopers, getting even tougher with the people out protesting, and not just the people protesting, journalists too. I saw the police being really tough last year, from water cannons and smoke bombs. The footage was crazy. Being there, believe me, was crazy, but now it's worse. As well as people losing their eyes to rubber bullets, and I saw mates hit with rubber bullets over there, and it does not look pretty. A yellow vest protester has now lost 4 fingers after a gas projectile exploded. The grenades were being thrown by the police as protesters tried to storm the Parliament building. The Interior Ministry said that a total of 4,000 people were out protesting in Paris last weekend, with a total of 8,000 protesting nationally. It's still a lot of people out there and angry. And journalists are seeing this police aggression too, because journalist Valentin Belev, 26 years old, wrote online, quote, "I show these injuries to denounce the deliberate assault of police forces against the press." And he's showing pictures there of wounds caused by these horrible rubber bullets and scuffed clothing from where people have been pushed over and dragged and attacked by these stormtrooper-style police. And there's a lot of footage on Twitter too, I'm sure you've probably seen it. The police are smashing phones and cameras and dragging people out of the way so you can't film the protests that are going on. It's almost as if they don't want the media to be talking about it. One has to ask at this point, has Macron lost his mind? Getting tough with people in the street isn't going to work when they're fighting injustice. These people aren't going out into the streets for fun. Maybe it's time for Macron to do something really radical and listen. By the way, if you want to see more footage from the Gilets Jaunes to see what's going on in Paris and hear from the Gilets Jaunes themselves why they're out protesting, then you can go to rebelfrance.com. We've got loads of coverage there from one of the first protests that happened in Paris. You can see all our coverage at rebelfrance.com, and you can even chip in to help cover those costs as well. Thanks for watching. We're not funded by the government, we don't have big sponsors, and we certainly don't have massive donors. If you'd like to help support our work, please go to rebeldonations.com/thebuck.